Taylor.
Sure, I'd like to invite Westview Elementary up and get ready in their positions. And as we've been doing for every board meeting, we have two schools tonight presenting their information regarding their school improvement leadership teams, which we call SILTs, and their school improvement plan. And so we have Principal Nick Swords here who will introduce his team and get us moving on their wonderful information.
When you're ready to speak. Good evening. It is great to be here tonight. As Dr. Taylor said.
Here.
Oh, pull it closer. Thank you.
You're loud enough, but we want TV land to hear
Gotcha. Dr. Taylor said, my name is Nick Swords. I have the privilege of being the principal at Westview Elementary School. With me tonight, I have Miss Addie Howe, who is our speech language pathologist and also the equity chair. I have Mrs. Stephanie Emsch, who is a kindergarten teacher, and she is our social, emotional, and academic committee chair. I have Mrs. Carol Wood, who is our instructional coach, interventionist, thought partner, sub extraordinaire. She does a little bit of everything, but she does an amazing job. She's also our teaching and learning chair. And then to my left, I have Mr. Dan Knock, who is assistant principal at Westview. Before we get going on our presentation, I would like to take a minute to first say thank you to Dr. Boozer and the board for giving administrators an opportunity to attend the National SAMS Conference. I have been in education for 28 years. I've been to 15 to 20 conferences, and this is by far the best conference I have ever been to. I did not get to listen to only national speakers. There were international speakers teaching about things that we need to know about, where we need to grow at Westview and within our district. So thank you for valuing us with that and providing us that amazing opportunity. So I really greatly appreciate that. As we move into the presentation, as Dr. Taylor said, we have our school improvement leadership team. At Westview, we have 3 committees. And as I talk about that work that I learned about at the national conference, equity is something that we talk a lot about and that sometimes is difficult to define. And so Mr. Ken Williams was one of the presenters out there, and he defined it in a way that I think is great for us at Westview to look at equity, and saying that it is committed to a culture of belonging and inclusion, organizing to provide students what they need when they need it with urgency to master essential learning outcomes. And so that really resonated with me when I was out there thinking about the work that Ms. Howe is leading on her equity chair, and that really sets well with the direction that they are going with that committee at Westview. When we get to teaching and learning, they're committed to equity through the improvement of student outcomes by identifying and implementing high-yield strategies that support our learning focus statement, which Mr. Knock will speak to in a moment. And then our social, emotional, and academic development team, that's a lot right there in the mouth, but is committed to equity by improving all students' sense of belonging and providing supports for students to be successful in school. And I hope you notice that, you know, we talk about the equity committee, but also embedded in the next 2 is the word equity, and that is done with purpose. We have to stop looking at equity as being something that is separate, that it's its own committee. Yes, there's great work that is going on that committee, but that work needs to be embedded in everything that we are doing within the other 2 SILT teams and also within our school as well. This time I'll let Mr. Knock talk about our targeted learning focus.
Yeah, good evening. So coming together, we obviously wanted to unify and come up with a targeted learning focus that the entire building can gather around and get behind. And we landed on all Westview students will deepen their comprehension throughout the entire school by building strong literacy foundational skills and expanding language development. Again, that aligning to the strategic plan priority 4 and strategies 4 and 5. Really looking at it behind that literacy component is across all contents, not just reading, language arts. You can gather that through math, through the sciences, through social studies, and then as Mr. Swords will end our presentation, also in those arts and the PE and just all subjects throughout.
So as we move to the next slide, you see our summative designation from the IER test as being commendable from last year. When you look at our IER test scores, we exceeded the state targets in math growth for all subgroups except Asian. And so that's something that we're very proud of at Westview. And we definitely have and see the opportunity gap between our black and white students, which is something that we talk about. We do not run from that. We talk about it in faculty meetings, in our collaboration meetings, anytime we're looking at student data. Another piece of data that we are very interested in and that we are utilizing, and Mrs. Emps uses with her team, talks about, is our panorama data. And in the winter, two positives that came out of that is teacher-student relationship. The students, 78% of the students, which puts us at 80, from the 80th to the 90th percentile, ranked that as favorable, and that's the highest range that you could have on the panorama survey for students. And then also growth mindset, which is just our students believing that they can grow their brains. They're not stuck where they are at. And we did a lot of work with that last spring. We're getting ready to kick something else off that Mrs. Wood may mention that continues to help students believe in themselves and that they can get there if they keep working hard. So how are we measuring this? How are we making sure these things are happening within the building? We have increased the number of classroom walkthroughs that we have done at Westview with feedback to teachers. Mr. Knock and I have looked at some research, also using a data form to collect and then providing that information back to teachers via a brief email, highlighting what they have done, and then also giving them some feedback, asking them if they'd like us to talk to them a little bit more about it. We offer that opportunity as well. One thing that we've been very excited about is the district has made the transition back to the science of reading. We've included not only our teachers in those trainings, but also our TAs. Our TAs spend so much time with so many of our students, not just our students who receive services through their IEP, but so many of our students stepping in. And so we have been very purposeful. Once again, Ms. Wood has done a great job of leading this training as we've studied the book, The 6 Shifts, Shifting the Balance through the 6 shifts in there. And so we are moving on to shifts 4 and 5 very soon, and have great conversations on those. And as we do those presentations, at the next collaboration, we come back and say, okay, what did you try from that last shift? What are you thinking differently about in your classroom? And then we look at, is there some data that you have? Are you starting to see some of those changes? We know that this is not a sprint where it's just going to change overnight. It is going to be a marathon, but there needs to be urgency in that marathon too. We need to be a top 5 finisher, not someone who's back in 30th or 35th, because it is our kids' education and we need to get that change moving forward. And then also our data-driven RTI process. Mr. Knock leads that committee, and I'll let him talk a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So really diving into it and understanding how we're using not only data within our classrooms for the instruction, but also data to support our students and what they truly need to access that instruction. And really not also as a team and an RTI team is trying to transition from that RTI to an MTSS process, that multi-tiered system of support, where it embodies the entire child, not just really focusing on academics, but behavioral supports also, while also including, of course, the important academic piece.
All right, at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Howe, and she's going to talk about what the work the Equity Committee has been doing.
Okay, so this is my first year as the chair of the Equity Committee, and we have been focused on some different staff trainings on African American English and learning more about our own personal biases and microaggressions and some of those implicit biases that we're not even aware of. We also have Dr. Scott Savage will be coming to present on restorative practices and helping us just learn how we can respond better to all of our students and helping support our Black and Brown students and helping them to be more successful while they're at Westview. And we are working on some ways to help our families become more involved in our community at our school and working on some things we can do to kind of get some of those barriers that our students have right now, that we can kind of break those down and work on closing that achievement gap.
And so as we look at the work that they have been doing, they're going to continue to look, as Ms. Howell said, some of those practices and structures And then really working with the other two teams. That's one thing that I love about working with the Silk Committee is these three ladies, the way that they communicate and work with each other, because they realize they don't work independently, they have to work together because there's many ideas that are going back and forth with each other, and really is a great sounding board for each of them as they move forward. And now we'll turn over to Mrs. Wood.
Good evening. So the teaching and learning team that I facilitate, we kind of started some of our work a couple of years ago. I'll share that in a second. But as Mr. Swords mentioned, a big piece that we're rolling out this year is doing a book study on shifting the balance, which we started in December. And we have loved including our TAs, and everyone's been involved. And as Mr. Swords mentioned, we're using our early out Mondays for that PD. And then we had the idea of, so if this is a space to kind of build our capacity and our knowledge around the science of reading, then taking it to collabs is an opportunity to talk about application. What will this look like? What shift will I make in my classroom? What are some strategies I've read in this book that now I want to try? I'm really excited. Even today, I had an aide approach me and ask some questions, wanting to know, how can I help this particular student I'm working with? This is where he's stuck. Where do I go next? So I've never had that happen as long as I've been a coach there, being approached by an aide. So I'm really excited that they're owning this work as well. Our committee is talking about, when we finish this book this year, what will we do next year to go deeper? You know, what will we take on to try and even grow in this work further with the science of reading? Will we go deeper, since comprehension is our focus, maybe another book study, or looking at some articles that can help us, you know, grow in that area. What I was starting to say is 2 years ago, the committee that I'm facilitating was a lot smaller, but we rolled out 2 strategies that we were challenged to take on. And so we chose learning targets after reading some articles, and also just helping kids with reflection. And so we laid some groundwork there. We did that PD on Zoom 2 years ago, if you all recall what our lives were like. And we have just continued to grow that work. It's really exciting. If you went in any space in our building, everyone has one of those little bullseyes, you know, so it just helps students know, if I'm in Miss Emsch's room and I see that bullseye, that's going to tell me what I'm learning in this space. If I go in the music room, I'll know what that bullseye helps me know that's what I'm expected to learn in this space. So we're working on continuing to grow that work collectively, so that we can help students take it further. Now that I've learned that, now what? How do I know I've learned it? So we want to help kids reflect on that in a deeper way. So we're going to work on some PD for that next year. And then I've been really excited. I've been able to go with Mr. Swords to the Focus Schools PD, and the idea that we're taking on this one thing in our building, which is our comprehension, is what we really know we need to focus on. So we will be looking at the 2 strategies we're doing and many other strategies, and seeing if they line up with, especially like John Hattie's work, and where we need to go next with that. And I just was going to share one really fun thing we're doing. We're trying to talk, the 3 of us, about how to get the kids excited about this, because it's not just for us. We want the kids to be excited about the comprehension focus, so we're going to have an assembly here soon, right, Ms. Howe? And the committee I'm working with, we're doing our 2nd annual Mindset Madness, which is like a March Madness with 16 books, and then we'll get down to a winner here in about a month or so. But we just hope that'll help kids get excited and talking about books in a deeper way. We have a TV station. Every morning we do the announcements. We're going to have kids share the introductions to the book each day, so they're building the background knowledge, because we've learned that's an important piece we've been missing. So we're really excited to use that vehicle, our Mindset Madness, to really get the kids excited about growing in comprehension. So Thank you.
Turn it over to Ms. Emsch.
Go, Miss Emsch. Here you
Okay,
go.
which one? Do I need both?
No.
So our committee has really been focused on engaging our families in the education of their child. You'll notice the picture on the top right. At the middle of January, we had a family engagement night where we did Lunar New Year bingo. And we did it in our community space, and we had over 300 people. So way more families than we had expected. We were pulling chairs and tables out, and it was madness. But so many families were excited to be back into Westview because it was our first really big family engagement opportunity. We love celebrating the greatness of our students, reviewing the school-wide and grade level specific data. So that was the panorama data that Mr. Swords talked about at the beginning. And so our next step is to develop the focused activities and resources that support our learning focus statement. So we're going to do more family engagement opportunities. We're talking about a movie night towards the end of the year that's more focused around Earth Day and just different opportunities.
So as you can see, each of the ladies up here spoke about how all of this is tying back into our learning focus statement. It's a Wildcat thing that they have on their sweatshirt. On the back, it's an acronym for the students believing in that they're going to learn and develop their comprehension achievement throughout the entire school. And that's what we're really focusing on. As Mr. Knock mentioned, it is not about just teaching it in the Gen Ed classroom. It is everyone's responsibility to approach that and to do that at the school. And so I've already seen examples of it happening in our specials classes already. In PE, Ms. Green using higher level vocabulary with the students and teaching them what the words mean. In the music room, it's just so easy for Ms. Kroll to advance that. And then also in the art room with Ms. Johnson, her doing activities, read-alouds with the students, and giving the kids, as Ms. Wood mentioned, that background knowledge that they need. Because if you look at some of the state standards, especially R1 5.3, R1 3.3 that I learned, we analyzed at our last meeting with Mr. Lair, is students have to have more background knowledge, and that is one of the reasons that they struggle in their comprehension. And so we as educators are focusing on that and working on that. And the last slide, we celebrate our diversity at Westview. We celebrate Westview. One of the reasons that I wanted to come to Champaign is that it is a diverse community. If you go and look at all the schools in the district, and I tell families when they come in, if you take a snapshot of Champaign, you will see that at Westview. It is a perfect, nearly perfect compared to our community and to our district. And so we celebrate our diversity all the time throughout the school year. In the top left-hand corner, a young lady from the university came in and read to the students during our Hispanic Heritage Month. And then the gentleman in the green shirt may be familiar to somebody up here, Ms. Vasquez, but that is our Hispanic Heritage Day parade where we do activities with the kids. The kids absolutely love it. And on the right is actually one of our custodians as well. We involve all of our staff members. Someone goes in and takes over a classroom so that the kids can see them in those parades and celebrating that. Our Lunar New Year there, we had the Korean drum corps from the university came in, thanks to Ms. Ko. And then we had our fifth grade string students come in the top right-hand corner, come into the cafeteria during lunch and play for one of the grade levels. Down in the bottom left, absolutely love this. This is Miss Jones. She graduated with her master's. She brought her cap and gown in, wanted to get a picture with her students, but just setting that college and career mindset with the students and sharing her experience with them. And then the bottom right picture is Miss Green, once again, our PE teacher who put together a running club with the kids. So just giving kids opportunities, because you could go into our building and if anyone's been there 2 more years and they ask you, what is Westview about? We are about educating the entire child. And that's really what we live on. So that is all we have. We thank you for your time and don't know if we take questions or not. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Comments?
Dr. Baker?
Just a couple of comments. I love that you are recognizing internal talent, whether that's Dr. Savage or it sounds like Mrs. Wood. You're going to be asked to do all kinds of things after this meeting because of your book club. I love to see that. Obviously, it's nice to have external speakers, but we have so many experts here. I love to hear and see. I'm intrigued. I also wonder if maybe we could talk to that aide for Grow Your Own. Sounds like a perfect candidate.
We work hard at that at Westview. Not only our
We
TAs.
recruited one
We did have
already.
one, actually, Miss Wilkerson, who is now a kindergarten teacher for us, was a former TA for 8 years at Westview. And then I talk to Kids Plus counselors as I see the amazing work that they are doing with students after school and saying, hey, why don't you go back and talk to HR about Grow Your Own and going back to college? And you just see that in people, right? You can see that character that is in there. And student teachers, recruit them hard. We've actually been able to have a couple of our students. Miss Jones was a student teacher at Westview who we were able to recruit and keep on as a staff member as well. So I
Awesome.
completely agree. Thank you.
Good job. That's what I should.
We-
That's
we
what
try.
I really
We
wanted
work
to
hard.
say.
We work hard at it.
I also wanted to say thank you for opening up your building. I know that we had Freedom Schools housed there this past summer, and I think there's another program. And I think that it is very central spot, and it's a wonderful school. So thank you for that. And lastly, I do want to recognize you, Mr. Swords. I think that it's important that other people realize that you've stepped up in other ways. And I saw that happen this past summer when the Broncos didn't have a coach. They needed a football coach, and you stepped up. And I'm sure you were tired. You probably wanted a summer off. But thank you for volunteering. I think it meant the world for students to see you in a different space. And so I just wanted to at least acknowledge you for that as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I love my job. I tell people, I've told Dr. Taylor this. I said, I love my job. I love what I do. I work at the greatest school. I know every principal believes that. But I love what I do each and every day. The students that we come in and work with, the staff we get to come in and work with every day, it's just that. I absolutely love it. So thank you for that.
Not only that, I just have to chime in. I went over to Garden Hills for the elementary intramurals, and he's coaching the basketball team as well. And also, I had one of your football players in my office, little fella. And he wanted to make sure he did right by you. So I just wanted to let you know that. And so Mr. Thomas and I had a long conversation with this little fella. So I just wanted to say thank you. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
My question comes from when you were talking about really promoting reading comprehension and how you have the, I don't remember what it was called, but the March Madness, the bracket thing. Mindset Madness. So on the subject of getting kids excited about reading comprehension specifically, and also on the subject of educating the whole child, how are you engaging kids in like choosing which books are going to be on the bracket and like doing some of the equity-minded activities that you've been doing? How are kids' voices brought into that?
For Mindset Madness.
The committee that I facilitate, we chose the books because this year we're doing it a little differently. You know, like a bracket has north, south, east, west. This year we're having themes, so we're going to have a perseverance theme, a problem-solving theme, so that kids we're kind of labeling for them the theme, which is such a tricky piece for kids usually. But we're pulling kids in to help us with writing. Last year they wrote summaries. This year we realized from chapter 1 of the book we read that we really need to take it higher with background knowledge. So we're going to have kids help with writing the introductions and also help with writing discussion questions that we can push out to classrooms so they can have discussions about the book with their students. Because, you know, a book will be shown on our in-house TV one day and then another book the next day, and then they vote. So we're imagining that, you know, kids could debate which book reflects perseverance in a better way, which one are you going to vote for? And then they get the opportunity to vote, and yeah. So,
That captures their
anyway,
voice.
thank you. It'll be fun. Come on over and watch.
Thank you.
And Ms. Vasquez?
So Elizabeth asked my question because I was really curious. I know it's very exciting, but I would like to make sure a copy of that comes home. We'd like to participate. I'd like to make sure I somehow hear about ordering before you all just tell my husband teacher, because I never get included, and I'd like to throw in my $35. My husband has taught for 6 years before he came to your school. He has never come home for the 6 years before that, talking about the students, talking about the parents, his colleagues, the team, how he feels in your building. So thank you.
Well, and it goes back to the team, right? It truly is the staff who is all in. As Dr. Boozer mentioned about this morning, there was calm, cool, and collected, taking care of those kids, keeping them quiet in case we needed to give them further directions, making sure they're in a safe spot as well. Kids that are crying, there's staff members sitting on the floor with them, patting them on the back. It's okay. As they went back to class, some of them needed to call their mom or dad or call home. Absolutely, not a problem. Because, and I know it happens at all the other elementary schools too, right? It's about that team that you have there. It's about people who truly are there because they want to be there for the kids and make a difference for them. It's not easy work, but these three ladies in their leadership and Mr. Knock and what he does each and every day, you see it each and every day, that teamwork come together. So thank you.
Mr. Brown?
So I'm stoked that you all are focusing on comprehension. So I just one quick question: How did you decide as a building or in leadership? How did you decide that comprehension was going to be your focus, and even with the professional development and equity? Like how are those topics selected and prioritized for PD, and then also like the school-wide focus?
Sure. I will talk about the comprehension and us focusing on that. That was the work that we have been doing with Focus Schools. They gave us protocol, provided us with protocols and a way to go work through that with our staff. And we sat in a faculty meeting in the cafeteria, and we started out in 8 separate groups, and people were able to talk about what they saw in our data, right? Not just coming out of left field or anything, but what's in our data, what are we seeing? And then from those 8 groups, we cut that down to 4, and then we got down to 2, and we talked as a big group then, right? And said, okay, where do we need to go? What do we believe? What do you as the educators in the classroom? Because coming from Mr. Knock and I, we can look at the data and make that decision, but getting our teachers involved in that and having their input in it and their buy-in, and all of the teachers, not just the classroom teachers, but our ESL teachers, our specials teachers, Ms. Wood, our librarian, all of them were part of that. And so as we look to that comprehension, that's how we came about that decision there. When it comes to the PD, we look and see how it relates to that data. What do we need? The science of reading is something that's been a big shift in our district. When you look at what we have done, when I first started here 6 years ago, all the work with Jan Richardson and the reading approach, and then now we're moving back to the science of reading, but it was still a mind shift for some teachers who have been here for a while, and they needed that and need to understand the shifts, and then also for new teachers, because I read an article off of Edutopia talking about background knowledge, and it was about, this isn't taught in colleges. It isn't taught unless you get a master's in reading. You don't learn this. And so we have these elementary teachers who are coming out, and they don't have that knowledge. And so we needed to make sure that we give it to all of our staff and present that. And then I'll let Ms. Howe, you want to speak to how your discussions on equity, PD?
I will say, so being an SLP, I love language, so I did kind of push the dialect PD on our staff because I was excited about it. But I think some of our PD this year, we took ideas and concerns from our staff, that a meeting that we had at the beginning of the year about things that they feel like we can do to improve the equity at our school. And then we kind of got our focuses from that. And then we talked as a team about kind of what we wanted to see more of, and the presentation from Dr. Savage, a lot of our equity team members went to his presentation in November, and learned a lot. And so we were hoping that after seeing that, we could bring that back to our staff. So we had a couple different ways that we picked out our PD.
And then also some of that came from Valda Valbrin as well. Some of the information that she would provide to us as principals, and then Mr. Knock and I would sit down, look at some of our data once again, and then make a decision, hey, we want to take this forward. The equity detours was on there, right? Those things that kind of were going in the right direction, but there's these little things that can pull us off. And so after we did some work last year, and we felt like we're in a really good spot now to move forward, we want to remind people, don't let these things pull us off. And that was the information that we got from Valda.
Awesome. Ms. Shannon?
I just want to highlight the fact that you talked about the science of reading and a lot of this stuff not being taught at college. This is something we actually discussed as a IASB resolution we would really like to see this being taught. Because otherwise, teachers are coming in without the foundational knowledge that they need to teach their students, and so districts are having to take on this cost afterwards. And so I very much appreciate you doing that, and I just want to highlight to everybody that we know how to teach kids to read, and we've known it for decades, and I so appreciate our bringing this back to the district. So thank you to all of you for doing that.
I was going to tie some things together for you like I try and do, because I think we're done with questions, right? Correct? I want to make sure. Oh, Amy, you got one? Okay. So one of the things thank you guys. I know it was a little, everybody gets a little nervous coming up here. I know they don't seem it, but believe me, when we're preparing and talking, there's a lot of that conversation. So you did a wonderful job. Secondly, I think Dr. Boozer and district administrators, we know this conversation. We do a lot of conversations about defined autonomy, loose type coupling, kind of how the district initiatives and drives for what we do and how it plays out. What happened here without being planned, really, was so many examples of that. So I just want to point it out because it's really important that you see that way that goes. One, Nick talked about walkthroughs, right? Part of professional development goals for principals are they have to do walkthroughs. That is a district kind of decided thing. That is me putting it through with them as their supervisor. They get away. There's two different things we kind of did through Mike's department. Nick and Dan added some more to it. So real good example, direction and activity coming through. The PD, even so itself, equity requirement to do PD, very clear. You must do this as a professional goal. Your staff must participate. Here's some guidance. Valda comes in and teaches, but you also see initiative allowed to happen. They went and saw Dr. Savage. They're bringing him in, went and called him, being able to take that drive. The TAs, the really good example in this building of this, even last year, before all this, we talked about how to get TAs more involved, but they also had to involve clerical and TAs in their PD this year. That was a new kind of, thing we said, and sure enough, they did. How did they do it, right? Monday early outs allow that now. Thank you very much, right? Different things are coming together really clearly. I said I would add things each time, so I'll stop there because I know we have another school coming. But really good examples of how all of that is shifting together. Oh, and even to the 2 strategies, which of course comes out of teaching and learning area, which will now go to 4 because of the focus schools work. We're actually going to look at 4 high yield instructional strategies, all connected with school improvement plan, SILT work, and then their ability to go make it happen. Through some cases, science of reading, because that was another one. Yeah, okay. Just putting it together for you.
So one final question. How can we support you? That's a big one. You can think about it.
I truly believe is that we know what our kids need, and it's different at each building. And so having that autonomy within a framework, right? We have the framework. It's like we talk about with curriculum. The curriculum is there as a resource. It's not the only thing. The true art of teaching is what can you pull from other areas when this student needs this and this student needs this. So as a board, as you look at providing us with that framework for what we need to do within the district, then giving us that ability, continuing to give us that ability to then say, Westview needs this, BTW needs this, Carrie Busey needs this, and us as leaders, but also as leadership teams as well. Because Mr. Knock and I could sit here and say whatever we need to say to get people to do what we need to do, but when we have this autonomy with our staff and their ability to have that input, it makes it so much more meaningful for him and I, as well as our staff. So just that framework for us to then give our kids what we need.
Thank you all so much, so much. Thank you for everything you do.
You make me proud, make me proud.
Yeah.